Washington State trooper is dead, shot and killed during a traffic stop near Port Orchard very early this morning. The search is on for the shooter. A live update from the scene from KOMO's Carlene Johnson.
Bill, the shooting happened here along Highway 16 near Port Orchard about 1 this morning. Troopers stopped a dark green truck, radioed in the license number. That officer didn't check back with headquarters, and after several minutes, they sent a deputy out to check on him, found him down next to his patrol car, shot, rushed to the hospital where he died. Now, the suspected shooter's vehicle was found in an area nearby here, a densely wooded area in some thick brush, and they've got a canine track searching for him at this point. But they're not even calling him a suspect. Here's what they're saying about the shooter.
No information about any suspect. At this point, we're looking for the registered owner of the truck. That was the last truck that the trooper stopped.
Residents in the area asked to call police if they spot anything at all suspicious. And now our Paul Tosh is watching the procession escorting the murdered trooper's body from the hospital in Tacoma. Paul?
This is just came off of Pacific Avenue, south of I-5 in the Tacoma Dome area at the Pierce County Medical Examiner's Office. Procession has now ended. The body has been transported inside of the building. There's still an enormous presence.
I know my colleague John Rapp is at St. Joe's in Tacoma, where that officer's body was removed from that area just a short time ago. John?
That's right, Carlene. A procession from the hospital to the medical examiner's office earlier this morning, and many State Patrol troopers and other law enforcement showing up in respect. And we may not know the name of this trooper who was shot and killed, but we are learning a lot more about the person he was. Here's how Chief John Batiste described him just minutes ago.
Well, I'll tell you this. He is a very popular individual within the agency, a great personality. I love being around him. A real sense of humor, a person who was highly thought of in the community.
We understand he was very involved in that community, speaking at schools and other functions. Batiste spoke here at the hospital, appearing with a chaplain and other State Patrol leaders. They've been doing some of the most difficult work that an officer has to do, talking with family members after something like this. We expect a procession at some point to honor the life of this State Patrol trooper, and possibly a public funeral later on, although that is solely at the family's discretion. Reporting live in Tacoma, John Rapp, KOMO Newsradio.
The search for the man who shot and killed a state trooper this morning near Port Orchard may be over. The latest developments now from KOMO's Carlene Johnson.
Good morning, Nancy. Here's the very latest. Authorities got a tip a little less than an hour ago about a home on Schofield Road near Mullinex Ridge Elementary School. Well, the school was put into total lockdown as officers then moved in.
As the SWAT team approached the house, they heard a single gunshot come from the area of the house. When they reacted to that and approached the house, they found a male subject who had a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
And he was still alive, being transported to Tacoma General, where my colleague John Rapp is this morning with the very latest on that.
I'm over here at Tacoma General Hospital right now, where an aid car with South Kitsap County pulled up just a couple of minutes ago. Somebody being unloaded from a stretcher on the back, taken into the hospital. Obviously no word at this point on his condition, but it looked like they had an IV going. So that's about the latest that we have on the condition of this person who was rushed from South Kitsap. Now, earlier we spoke with State Patrol Chief John Batiste about the fallen trooper, 44 years old, a military veteran. His son currently a soldier. Chief Batiste described him as well-regarded, popular in the community. He says everyone's grieving today.
This brings back bad memories. I've done this work for a long time, and no matter how many times you experience this, it's like it's fresh all over again.
We'll keep you posted on the very latest information from Tacoma. Reporting live, John Rapp, KOMO Newsradio.
And we are just getting confirmation that this suspect at Tacoma General Hospital has died.
He was 44 years old, military veteran, and a father. State Patrol Trooper Tony Radulescu was shot and killed during a traffic stop today, just before 1 a.m. in Kitsap County. KOMO's John Rapp begins our team coverage.
This is where an aid car brought the wounded trooper after he didn't answer his radio for a status call, later pronounced dead. This is also where, in a hospital conference room, State Patrol Chief John Batiste reflected on the qualities that made Radulescu an exceptional trooper. His personality, his knack for talking to kids at local schools. He says everyone's grieving today.
This brings back bad memories. I've done this work for a long time, And no matter how many times you experience this, it's like it's fresh all over again.
Radulescu's a native of Romania, arriving in the U.S. when he was 14. He served in the military, as does his son. Plans for a memorial and funeral service are pending based on the wishes of Radulescu's family. In Tacoma, John Repp, KOMO News Radio.
The man believed responsible for the trooper's death is now dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He's identified as 28-year-old Joshua Blake, an ex-con with a long criminal history.
Fourth-degree assault, malicious mischief, drugs, and also violating a protection order.
Chad Lewis with the Department of Corrections tells us Blake was released from state supervision back in August of last year.
Well, the death of the trooper has hit the sheriff of Kitsap County very hard. Here's KOMO's Carlene Johnson.
He wanted to let State Patrol speak about the loss of their trooper, but just inside the doors of the Kitsap Sheriff's Office, their top cop, Steve Boyer, couldn't help but tear up when we asked about Tony.
You don't want to see me cry, do you?
He worked with the trooper for many years when the sheriff was with State Patrol.
He was a guy you could always depend on. You give him a task. He worked hard.
As for the shooter, Sheriff Boyer says they've had run-ins with him before, all over drugs.
But even with drugs, that's not an excuse. This was a choice to kill a human being. Cold blood.
Carlene Johnson, KOMO News Radio.
There is a growing memorial along Highway 16 where the trooper was shot and killed. KOMO's Hannah Scott joins us live from the scene right now. Hannah?
All right, Herb. Well, I am here right along Highway 16 where this trooper lost his life this morning. And this memorial is growing, as you said. In front of me, a white wooden cross that has the words Trooper Tony on it. Several dozen bouquets of flowers, American flags, small handwritten notes. One that struck me here is a couple of balloons that say Super Trooper Tony. We will miss your smiling face and hugs. Love the airport diner. They've actually left a couple of balloons here. One says thank you. There are also statues of eagles, candles, and a picture of this trooper, all of them just saying, hey, thank you for your service, and we will miss you. I have spoken to a couple of women who have come up to drop off some carnations in the time I've been here. They don't really, they didn't know him. They're from the community. One woman says her daughter is dating a police officer, so it just hit home for her. She was actually tearing up quite a bit when I spoke with her. And another woman just brought her little girl just because it's been a long time, she says, since this community has felt anything like this, and she just felt sad. So again, this memorial is growing here. I should, though, tell you that the Washington State Patrol asking folks not to bring these flowers here. It is very dangerous right along a very high traffic zone on Highway 16. They're asking folks who would like to bring any flowers to bring it to the division headquarters in Bremerton. Reporting live from Kitsap County, Hannah Scott, KOMO News Radio.
Well, Joshua Blake, the man who shot that trooper, was an ex-con.
He was a difficult offender to manage both in prison and in the community. Had multiple infractions, multiple violations in the community. Failed to report to his community corrections officer. Would sometimes fail to complete chemical dependency treatment.
That's Chad Lewis with the Department of Corrections. Blake, who was 28 years old, shot himself and died this afternoon.
The ex-girlfriend of the man who shot and killed a state trooper is under arrest in KOMO's Ian Sterling. At Kitsap County, where the woman is due in court later this afternoon.
Josh Blake gunned down State Trooper Tony Radulescu during a traffic stop. Police say his ex-girlfriend tried to help him get away. She was in the trailer that Blake shot himself dead in hours later. Kitsap County Sheriff Steve Boyer thanked the public for all their help in the past couple of days.
The outpouring of support from the community, I can't say enough. I've been in this business for 40 years, and it reaffirms my belief in the citizens we serve.
The woman they arrested may be the only one left alive that knows just what happened when the trooper pulled Blake over. The trooper's car did not have a dash cam. In Port Orchard, Ian Sterling, KOMO News Radio.
4 more people have been arrested as detectives continue their probe. The 4 people are all from South Kitsap, and all 4 face charges of rendering criminal assistance to Joshua Blake. He's the man who killed Trooper Tony Radulescu and then took his own life. Kitsap County Sheriff's detectives say one of the 4 is an 18-year-old woman. They tell us she was a passenger in Blake's truck at the time the trooper was murdered. 2 other men in their 30s and a 26-year-old woman who were at the home where Blake abandoned a pickup truck are also in the Kitsap County Jail. Jail. Bail for the four set at $500,000 each. They'll be arraigned in Kitsap County Superior Court on Monday. That makes 5 people now in custody in the murder of Trooper Tony Radulescu, and the woman who was arrested shortly after the killing faced a judge on Friday.
KOMO 4's Tracy Vetter says despite years of domestic violence, prosecutors say Jessie Foster met Josh Blake at a trailer park where she tried to hide him from police.
Investigators still don't know how Blake got from where he ditched the pickup to the trailers 5 miles away, where, in spite of their history, Foster met him early Thursday morning. The pair have a 3-year-old daughter together. Blake served time in prison for assaulting her. Investigators say at the trailers, Blake confessed he'd shot Trooper Radulescu.
Eventually, he made a statement to her that he'd shot a cop.
In spite of that, investigators say Foster never called 911 and still made calls looking for a ride for Blake when a SWAT team surrounded the trailer and Blake shot himself in the head.
She was with Joshua Blake and they were trying to figure out a way to leave the area.
Wayne Foster says once his daughter realized what Blake had done, she didn't know what to do. She was frightened, and this was one more example of their abusive relationship.
He took advantage of her all the time, continually. If it wasn't my daughter, it was someone else.
Well, within the next few minutes, hundreds of law enforcement personnel who've gathered at Kitsap Mall in Silverdale will begin the memorial procession. We have team coverage this morning. First, KOMO's Carlene Johnson live.
Boy, the people are lining up. Just folks from the community have come out here as the procession just right now as I speak to you begins to pull out from this parking lot at Kitsap Mall. This is the beginning of a long funeral procession today, and one of the troopers taking part, a good friend of Tony's, Trooper Matt McMillan, says it hasn't really hit him yet because of all the busyness of the last week, but he says they all look out for each other, and in coping they will do that, and they don't have time, he says, to get caught up in that anyway.
The job goes on. We have to go back out tomorrow and stop cars again. Tonight we have to stop drunks. And unfortunately the rest of the world doesn't stop, and there's people out there that we need to protect, and that doesn't stop.
Some folks here who've lined the route out of the mall parking lot are standing crying. Some have American flags, others with hands over heart. I just talked to a man who says, I can't believe this has happened again, and just how sad this day truly is. Later today, this all ends up in Kent, where the memorial for Trooper Radulescu will take place, and that's where my colleague, John Repp, is. John?
Carlene, a lot of people here have been talking about the exact same thing, that we have another one of these memorial services to attend, and how tragic this all is. In the past half hour, I've seen a lot more police agencies arriving here from as far away as Spokane, and I just saw someone from a county in Idaho driving by. Some of them already in their dress uniforms, others are in street clothes for traveling, and this is very much a statewide memorial since this is the Washington State Patrol, and Trooper Julie Startup says officers have to mentally prepare themselves for today.
You know how difficult it is to be part of it. It's a wonderful experience. It's a great tradition, but it's really hard. I mean, we all realize that it could quite easily be one of us, and it is one of us.
She says local agencies are working extra hours today to fill in for troopers who would like to attend. Reporting live in Kent, John Repp, KOMO Newsradio.
KOMO AAA traffic and weather every 10 minutes on the 4s.
This procession we've been talking about all morning has some effect on traffic, and KOMO's Carlene Johnson is following that.
Yeah, they cleared out this lot at Kitsap Mall here in Silverdale in about 10 minutes from start to finish. Hundreds of officers for the funeral procession, eventually ending up today in Kent. But starting off this morning, the near traffic impact is going to be right here in Kitsap County as they head through Port Orchard. And let's get a view from overhead and our Paul Tosh. Paul?
Front end of the procession approaching the Chico area, and they are shutting down and thinning out the freeway ahead of this procession. They are moving rather slowly. This will be a very calculated procession, again in honor of fallen officer Radulescu. Eventually they will get onto Highway 16, cross the Narrows Bridge, head south onto 512. They are going to join with hundreds of officers waiting for them at the Joint Base Lewis McChord. They will join and then head northbound into Kent on the Valley Freeway. So that's the plan.
The memorial for murdered State Trooper Tony Radulescu is going on right now at Kent's Showware Center. About 700 law enforcement and emergency vehicles with their lights flashing escorted the hearse carrying his body to the memorial. The procession started 7:30 this morning. At one point, the line of law enforcement vehicles extended some 12 miles on the way to Kent, and that is where we find KOMO's John Rapp.
Well, from that long procession this morning that you mentioned to the solemn and respectful honor guard in front of the ShoWare Center, this day has been filled with reminders of the life and death of Trooper Tony Radulescu, from his co-workers who served as pallbearers today to the program that shows him smiling in multiple photos, and even strangers, many strangers who never knew the popular trooper but wanted to be here anyway, from literally all four corners of the state and beyond. Now, the program itself, it will include speeches from Chief John Batiste, Radulescu's girlfriend Gina Miller, and his son, Eric Radulescu. There will be a musical selection, a video montage, and then a benediction. Reporting live in Kent, John Repp, KOMO News Radio.
Inside the ShoWare Center in Kent today, a memorial service that lasted more than 2 hours. Fellow officers, family, and friends shared their thoughts on Trooper Tony Radulescu, who was gunned down a week ago today. They remembered a great colleague, a wonderful father, and a loving soulmate.
His girlfriend and fellow trooper Gina Miller remembering his warm smile and big heart and his dedication to the job.
He gave 110% every day he went to work. He treated everybody with dignity and respect, the way he would want others to treat him.
Washington State Chief Trooper John Batiste.
Our pledge as state troopers is to continue serving in his name through service with humility.
And his son Eric, who serves in the U.S. Army, one day may become a trooper himself.
Even though I lost one very close family member, it looks like I've found thousands more, and that's still a good feeling.
The governor, her voice hoarse, thanking the family for his service and his sacrifice.
Only with support and love could he do what he did for the people of the state of Washington.
Larry Rice, KOMO News Radio.
Now, this has been a very tough day for the State Patrol, but an honor guard from around the Pacific Northwest showed up to support them at the memorial for Trooper Tony. KOMO's John Repp has that part of our team coverage.
They lugged in bagpipes, drums, flags, all in their dress uniforms with gloves, hats, gold braid, and black bands across their badges. Connie from Spokane says it's automatic for anyone in law enforcement.
We're a team, when one of ours are fallen, we all feel the effect.
Firefighters, park rangers, and corrections officers were in the crowd today from Moses Lake to Grant County to Vancouver, Washington. Others from across the border. In Kent, John Repp, KOMO News Radio.
A guilty plea this morning from one of the people who helped Joshua Blake in the hours after he killed State Trooper Tony Radulescu. Jesse Foster tried to get Blake to ride to another house, but wasn't successful, so the charge was attempted rendering criminal assistance. Today she admitted to that and apologized to Trooper Radulescu's loved ones. Gina Miller, Trooper Tony's girlfriend, brought his ashes and pictures up and read a statement in court. Now, even though she's done this several times, she says it doesn't get any easier.
It's just as bad every time. I mentally have to prepare for that every time. I have to relive what happened on that night every time.
6 months is Foster's sentence with credit for time served and possible time off for good behavior. She could be out in a month.
Guilty. That's the verdict of the trial of the young woman who admits she was in a car with Josh Blake when he shot and killed a state trooper. KOMO's Ian Sterling talked with the trooper's girlfriend.
The jury has found Megan Mollett guilty of attempting to help Blake elude police and of lying to investigators after Blake shot and killed Trooper Tony Radulescu. Gina Miller is the trooper's longtime girlfriend.
The first day of the trial was very, very emotional, listening to the deputies and the sergeant talk about what they witnessed at the scene when they went to help Tony.
She says she's pleased with the verdict, but it still won't bring Tony back.
It's very frustrating to me. It's just total disregard for humanity.
Sentencing for Mollett is set for next month. She could get up to 10 years behind bars.